1, 2, 3, 4!
This powerful rock song, written in late 1962, is frequently associated with the singer, Paul. Nevertheless, John does not remember being heavily engaged. Paul later told Mark Lewison in 1988 that they wrote it together at his house at 20 Fortland Road. He had some lyrics and a bit of music, and then they both grabbed guitars and finished it up with a sprinkle of piano. Exactly what John contributed is unknown, though according to Paul, John scoffed at the George Formby-style opening lines. She was just 17, never been a beauty queen, replacing them with the streetwise, she was just 17, and you know what I mean.
When I showed it to John, he screamed with laughter and said, "You're joking about that line, aren't you?" And I realized that, in fact, I was, and we changed it.
Yeah, we both looked at each other, and I knew that he was going to say that, and I was like, oops, this is not good.
The song became part of the Beatles' live act in 1962. The boys apparently felt confident enough in this new track to perform it at the Star Club during their fifth and final residency in Hamburg, Germany.
I've written a lot of songs, but certain ones stand out.
Paul said, adding, "If I had to choose what I thought was my best work of the years, I would probably include I Saw Her Standing There." John once said that the track is, quote, Paul doing his usual good job of producing what George Martin used to call a pot boiler. The idea for this song popped into Paul's head while heading to a gig in Hurricaneville on October 22nd, 1962. He grabbed his guitar as soon as he arrived, determined not to forget it. Impressed with the tune, Rory Storm asked Paul if he could use it only for his band, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, which used to feature Ringo on drums. Paul said yes, but he soon forgot about this verbal agreement and did it with his own band. Having some spare time, Paul chose to take a hitchhike to London with his girlfriend at the time, Celia. Celia recalls the details of this journey, which started on October 24th, 1962, in the book Tune In.
We had an amazing time, just wandering streets in the sunshine, looking at London, holding hands and having fun. He said, "What rhymes with 'we danced through the night'?" And I came up with, "we held each other tight," which was really quite naff, but he used it. He worked out a fair bit of the lyric by the end of the day.
Regarding the girl in the song, some think it's Iris Caldwell, but Celia disagrees. She believes it was about them, although it was not explicitly stated.
I feel like the song was about us, but it wasn't said. It was implicit but difficult to state openly, because it would have made things terribly intimate. But I was very flattered, and it became for me an abiding memory of our trip to London.
It's important to note that Celia was in fact 17 at the time, which is too convenient to be a coincidence. Then, to finish it, Paul and John met at 20 Fortland Road, perhaps in the last few days of November 1962, shortly before their last Hamburg stay. Now considered a classic rock and roll song, I Saw Her Standing There is reckoned by those who knew the Beatles in their early days to be one of the most representative of the Liverpool pop scene at the time. The other being the Big Three's version of Some Other Guy, which the Beatles too played live. John in particular was obsessed with it. He named it twice as a record he somehow wished to imitate in a 1968 Rolling Stone interview. It's possible that I Saw Her Standing There was the Beatles' first try at a song similar to Some Other Guy. Tony Sheridan, the original English rock star whom the Beatles supported at Hamburg's Top 10 Club in 1960, and whose guitar style suggested the bluesy sevenths that characterized their early work, was a major influence on both tracks. George Martin thought about recording Please Please Me in front of the band's home crowd, hoping to capture some of the excitement of this jive hall ambience. This unfulfilled plan is likely what led him to keep Paul's opening count off, which is so reminiscent of the Beatles' performances at the Cavern and the Casbah.
John and I used to nick a lot.
Paul once said, which is a nice way of saying that they had plagiarized lyrics from other tunes.
But the way we did it, it just gets you into the song. And in the end, you never notice where it was nicked from. You put it all together, and it makes something original.
Author Mark Lewison gives some examples of nicking, one being the lyric, "I saw her standing on a corner," from the Coasters' hit Youngblood. Another fascinating nick was that Paul's bass line for the song was exactly lifted from the Chuck Berry hit I'm Talking About You, which was performed frequently by the Beatles in 1962.
I played exactly the same notes as he did, and it fitted our number perfectly.
Paul says.
Therefore, I maintain that a bass riff doesn't have to be original.
This is the first song by the Beatles that was released with a high falsetto. They closed their eyes, shook their heads, and reached up for the falsetto notes during the performances, which sparked a wild reaction, especially from adoring teen girls.
Yeah, the woo was taken from the Isley Brothers, Twist and Shout.
Yeah.
Which we stuck in everything, From Me to You, She Loves You, they all had that woo.
This aspect became a mainstay of their early repertoire of successes. In live performances, I saw her standing there could stretch out for up to 10 minutes, adorned with multiple guitar solos. However, the group had to stick to a more basic structure for the recording due to the strict time constraints and precision required for radio play. I had been up to the cavern and I'd seen what they could do, George Martin recalled. I knew the repertoire and I said, let's record every song you got. Come down to the studios and we'd just whistle through them in a day. The track was recorded on February 11th, 1963, between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. during the first recording session of that day. In later 1962, during rehearsals at the Cavern Club, John tried his hand at playing harmonica on the song, but on this particular day in the studio, the Beatles went back to their usual configuration of guitars, bass, and drums. They performed the song live, including the backing and lead vocals. There were no overdubs at this stage. The song was finished and, practically speaking, flawless on the first take. This indicates that every part of the song was thoroughly practiced in advance, as the Beatles had been playing this song in their shows for several months. George Harrison was given a modified 16-bar verse/chorus break to showcase his refined Gretsch duo Jet. Under less nerve-wracking circumstances, his debut solo on a Beatles song could have been rattled off with more authority. Aside from that, this is a thrilling show that demonstrates the real captivating force that rocked the Liverpool clubs in 1961 and 62. It's interesting to note that George Harrison's guitar had a significant amount of reverb added to it by the production team just for his guitar solo. They did this in an effort to set the solo out from the rest of the song. Then as soon as the solo ended, they turned down the reverb to make it sound the same. However, George Martin believed that this interpretation could be even better. The boys were already getting frustrated with having to perform the song so many times after making 7 more attempts, in which all of them made mistakes at one time or another. Paul audibly counts down from take 9 to 1, 2, 3, 4, obviously frustrated, which propels the group through a perfect version of the song. Being 1 p.m. already, everyone involved must have felt the song was complete and decided to finally move on to the next, but not before lunch. But instead of eating, the Beatles chose to spend the remainder of the session practicing and drinking milk in the empty studio. They had no idea that later that day they would be singing the same song again. George Martin had decided that the group clapping their hands along with the song would create a lively vibe, so at approximately 4:45 p.m., the Beatles assembled around a microphone to do just that. The song was actually complete by 5 p.m. Paul's enthusiastic 1, 2, 3, 4 countdown of the song was chosen by George Martin because he thought Paul's countdown was especially spirited and would create the pot boiler vibe he intended to start the album with. The idea behind this countdown was to present the Beatles as a live act, emulating the opening line of Elvis Presley's debut album, Blue Suede Shoes. Till today, I Saw Her Standing There has been a staple of Paul McCartney's live concerts.
Seeing it now, and this happens with all the Beatles songs I sing, particularly from the earlier period, I realize I'm reviewing the work of an 18 to 20-year-old boy. And I think this is very interesting because it's got a kind of innocence that you can invent.
The Beatles put a lot of effort into both creating and absorbing the beat music frenzy that swept through Hamburg and London in the early 60s. Unlike some songs they produced early in their careers, this one truly captures the swinging dance vibe they were popular for at their hometown's Cavern Club. Built on blues changes and the group's trademark abrasive vocal harmonies and open fourths and fifths, I Saw Her Standing There sent a shock of earthy rawness through the British pop scene. The genuine voice of youth had returned to the radio, reigniting the rock and roll uprising from the 50s that had been dormant since 1960.